Hello and welcome to Life Plus. My name's Ailsy and I'm going to be your guide and helper as you continue to learn more English. We'll be working on some phrases and vocabulary in each session and we'll have a particular topic that we focus on. Vítejte u pořadu Life Plus na Radio 7. Why Life Plus? Well, everyone knows what life is. Život. We all have life and life gives us plenty to talk about. And plus, because it's going to be more than just about life, there's going to be something a bit deeper as well. Maybe something from the Bible, or from a Christian who said something interesting, something which makes us think. So welcome again to Life Plus. Today in the studio with me, I have Pete Dunn, an Englishman who lives here in the Czech Republic. Welcome, Pete.
Welcome, Isla, and welcome to the radio.
Thank you. So where are you from exactly?
Well, initially, I was born in 1960 in the town of Slough, which is about 50 kilometres from London. And it initially started off as part of the overspill in the sense that after the Second World War, there wasn't enough houses in London for people to live in. So my family moved to Slough. And then in 1967, we moved 120 kilometres east to a town called Thetford in Norfolk, which is where I spent my childhood and most of my adulthood until I met my wife, and we then moved to Bury St Edmunds before coming to Czech.
Tak, rozuměli jste? Třeba Pete říkal overspill from London. To byly přeplněné londýnské komunity, které byly vystěhované v důsledku vládní politiky, přesunu obyvatel z Londýna do jiných oblastí v jihovýchodní Anglii. Overspill from London. My childhood. Mé dětství. My childhood. My adulthood. Moje dospělost. My adulthood. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about your work, because you were telling me about some really interesting work that you were doing in England, working with people who'd had some mental health difficulties and so on. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
I can tell you about my work. Initially, when I left school, I worked on ancient monuments because I was fascinated by history, and I am a qualified stonemason. But in 1984, because of the recession and losing work, I lost my job and ended up doing work in warehousing before I found a career which really interested me in special needs mental health. I've always had an interest working with charities, and I was very privileged with some of the charities to, especially at the end of communism, to go over to Romania to work in the orphanages, the care homes and the mental health institutes. And that got me interested in working with this kind of clientele. And then I had the chance, after my father died, I had the chance of seeing a job in a place called Care Principles outside Newmarket. And it was working with adults with special needs, learning disabilities, severe autism and illnesses like that. And it was a 36-bedded unit, men and women, and the age ranged from 16 to about 60, I think the oldest chap was. They lived there permanent. They, for their own safety and for other reasons, they were sectioned under the Mental Health Act, which meant that they weren't capable of looking after themselves. But the unit was made into 5 houses, and in each house there was 8 bedrooms and support facilities, bathrooms, toilets, kitchens, lounge, TVs and everything. And in the unit as well, there was a small gymnasium. And I was part of what they called the learning support team. And that is what my qualifications are. I'm a teacher, a special needs teacher of adults with learning and behavioural difficulties.
Tak, rozuměli jste? Třeba ancient monuments, starověké památky. Ancient monuments. A qualified stonemason, kvalifikovaný kameník. A qualified stonemason. The recession, recese. The recession. Warehousing, skladování. Warehousing. A career, kariéra. A career. Special needs, zvláštní potřeby. Special needs. Mental health, duševní zdraví. Mental health. Working with charities, práce s charitativními organizacemi. Working with charities. Orphanages, dětské domovy. Orphanages. Care homes, pečovatelské domy. Care homes. Clientele, klientela. Clientele. Learning disabilities, poruchy učení. Learning disabilities. A 36-bedded unit, 36-lůžková jednotka. A 36-bedded unit. They were sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Byli rozděleni podle zákona o duševním zdraví. They were sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Support facilities. Zařízení podpory. Support facilities. Gymnasium. Tělocvična. Gymnasium. A learning support team. Tým podpory učení. A learning support team.
My main role was to take patients into the community. And we didn't call them patients because it's not fair. It's not fair. They're not patients. They're residents, and there's a big difference. The difference is they're all God's children, and to call them a patient, in my views, is not right. They were residents. They were special, and they had a right to a quality of life, and that's what the unit tried to give them, a quality of life, because being locked up 24 hours a day is not right if you don't do something with these people. And I was very privileged to be able to work there and to get the qualifications I got from the unit. I mean, to give an example, people say to me, I don't know how you can do it, and I don't know how you could do it, and you must have had qualifications before you went there. The job I was doing before going to Beach House was cleaning toilets in the warehouse. Although I'm qualified in other skills, that was my last job, to clean toilets. And then I went into mental health, where I became a teacher of adults with learning behavioural difficulties. And it was hard. I've had many thumps. I've got hit times when residents have lost their patience. And I've got hurt. I've had broken ribs, my hair pulled out, dislocated shoulders. But they were special. And it was a very special job.
You were telling me that you could take them sometimes to church if they wanted to. Can you tell us something about that?
I'd love to. Probably some of the most special moments in my life. There was a time in everything when there's always an area where the needs are not met, and the spiritual need was not met. And it was quite funny because it started off that this was just after I'd met my future wife. And at the time, she was working living care in Tame in Oxfordshire, which was about 150, 200 k's from where Beach House was. And I went, and I could only visit her weekends for a couple of hours. And I got a call that one of the lads wanted to go to midnight mass, and the staff had let him down. So he spoke to me and said, could you take me to midnight mass? And I said, okay. So I arranged with Eva, my wife, that I'd leave an hour early, and I drove back, and I went to Beach House and took this chappie, and I won't mention names because of confidentiality, because I believe strongly in it. But I took him to the midnight mass in the Church of England church. And it was lovely. This chappie, we didn't know the words to the Christmas carols. There were Christmas carols I remember as a child, but I've forgotten the words. But we were singing our hearts out. And I saw this man who's got all sorts of problems at peace in a church. And after that, I realised that a lot more residents could get strength out of being in a church just to express their views. It was another tool for me. And because I met my wife at Hengrave Hall, which was a Christian retreat run by nuns, we used to take the patients there for work experience. And I was allowed to use the facilities in Hengrave Hall and then in Exton Church and a couple of other churches where I could take the patients 1-to-1, 2-to-1 and let them express their views. Now, the law states in Britain that since I'm not a lay preacher and I haven't been to a theological college or anything, I'm not allowed to express my views. It's just taking the people there and letting them express theirs. And I've had some very emotional experiences. A young lad, James, who's lost his brother. His brother died, sadly, of asphyxiation because the room he was sleeping in had a fire in there and a bird had put a bird's nest on top of the chimney and they didn't realise and he got asphyxiated and died. And used to take James there on the time of his brother's death, the anniversary, and James would light a candle on the high altar and he would just turn around and say, "That's going up to my brother." And it was emotional. People like my other chap who opened up his heart at Hengrave and I was with him in the evening. And we was allowed to ring the church bell and we got halfway up the church tower to ring the bell and this chap turned around to me and said, "God hates me, I'm going to hell because I killed my social worker." And it was like, wow, what do you say when that happens? Because you can't say anything, but you know it's a big event in his life. And I did what comes natural. You just take him to see Sister Kate, who was a lovely, lovely nun. She was really brilliant. Taught me a lot about faith, Sister Kate did, because it didn't matter what faith you were or what level, she respected you. And I just took Sister Kate and told her what Andrew had said. And she said, well, let's sit down with a cup of tea and a biscuit, old chap, and talk about it. And to cut the long story short, within 6 months, this chap was ended up living in the community in a home suitable because I went back to Beach House, spoke to the supervisors, the clinical team, and they were able to talk to Andrew. And it seems that actually, yes, he might have killed his social worker in the sense he hit him, but the chappie had a bad heart. And by his feelings coming out, it meant that the social workers and the professionals could work with him to put him in the community. That's all it took.
Tak, podíváme se na nějaké fráze, třeba take patients into the community. Vzít pacienty do komunity. Take patients into the community. Residents, obyvatele. Residents. They had a right to a quality of life. Měli právo na kvalitu života. They had a right to a quality of life. Being locked up 24 hours a day. Být zavřený 24 hodin denně. Being locked up 24 hours a day. I was privileged to be able to work there. Bylo mi ctí, že jsem tam mohl pracovat. I was privileged to be able to work there. Well, thank you so much, Pete. It's been really great to talk to you, and thank you so much for sharing those stories. And next month we're going to talk to you a little bit more about your life now in the Czech Republic. So thank you once more.
Life Plus.